Hello guys, this is KavVDK from Passable.com, and I haven't published any videos recently for Passable.com or my YouTube channel, and the reason for that is I simply do not have that much time. So this is going to be a big tutorial. It's going to have two parts. The first part is designing. The second part is coding. So I'm going to design a website layout, and then my friend Rutger, the the other owner of Passable.com, is going to show you how to code it. So we can start off by opening Photoshop. The version of Photoshop that you use won't matter that much. There might be a couple differences to layout of everything, but the tools I use are pretty much all the same. So in this video I am using Adobe Photoshop CS4. What we want to do first is go up to File, hit New, and for pixels we can put in width as 1000 pixels, and how about our height as 2000 pixels. Let's keep a white background. Alright, now we can go to actual pixels, and let's make it fit screen. Since I'm recording at a 720p dimension, I can't exactly fit the whole thing on my screen, so I can't zoom in all the way that I want to. Let's make sure our canvas size is correct, 1000 by 2000. Let's just make it 1500, so it's easier to manage. Okay, there we go. Now we have our template right there for our web design. So the first thing we want to do is create our background. Now for this, the background is going to be a light gray color. So we're going to go down to our colors down here, and let's click the background color. And let's pick a light gray, like maybe D5, 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 probably looks good. Hit OK. Now create a new layer by clicking Control-Shift-N, or you can go to Edit, Layer, New, and New Layer. You can name this Gray Background. Okay, now to fill in the background, we can just hit Control Backspace, which will fill with the background, or you can go to Edit and Fill. Now that background looks a bit dark, so let's pick a lighter gray. Let's fill it. Maybe a bit lighter. This looks good. Okay, then we want to get our primary shape for all the content out of the way. So let's go to Rounded Rectangle tool, and let's choose a radius of about 10 pixels. So we want to start at the top left and head down to the bottom right. So just click and drag. Now don't worry about perfectly centering it, because I'll show you how to center it perfectly. So once you have that selection, you let go, and then let's go to the pen tool. Now right click inside your canvas and click Make Selection. Okay, now you can hit OK, and let's go to a new layer. We can name this layer Main. Now what we want to make sure, just in case we have to use it later, is to save our selection. So we can go to Select, Save Selection, and let's just create a new channel, just leave it as new, and let's name it Main. Okay, there we go. Now we have to pick our colors. Our colors, let me just pause this video and grab the colors 1 second. Okay, now our background, our main color is going to be this color. It's a nice blue. The color is 39A2FB. So once you have that selected, click OK, and then you can hit to make sure, let's say this is white, to make sure the blue is the background layer, you can switch it around with the X button. So let's make the blue the background layer, then hit Control Backspace. Okay, once you have done that, you can tell that it's not exactly centered. So let's click Control A, which is used to select the whole canvas. And then let's go to Layer, Align Layers to Selection, and then let's choose Horizontal Centers. It'll center both sides, so each side has the same amount of pixels from the main blue part to the edge of the canvas. And then we'll center it vertically, and that'll make sure that there are the same amount of pixels from the blue part to the top of the canvas as the blue part to the bottom of the canvas. Now our layout is perfectly centered on the canvas. This is a good trick to use for multiple things, not only this. So our next part is we want to create a small gradient from the top part of the blue main part. So what we want to do is go to Select, Load Selection, and let's just choose Main. Click OK. Well, I saved the selection a bit late, but what you can do, a bit early, but what you can do, you can control click the icon. So in your layers palette, control click the icon of the canvas on the main layer, and it will select the shape that you have there. So now what we're going to do, we're going to take our rectangle tool, and we're going to choose to subtract from selection. We're going to cut off the bottom half. Okay, now we just cut off the bottom half of the selection. So as you can see, only the top half is left. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to call this the main top gradient. So let's just call it top gradient. And we're going to hit X to get blue as a foreground color, and then we're going to click the color and make it a bit darker. Let's go to our gradient tool, which you can just get to by hitting the G key, and up at the top up here you can click here, and let's choose a blue to transparent. What you want to do, you want to choose the horizontal gradient or the vertical gradient, and start from the top, holding shift, go straight down as far as you need. So let's go maybe a fourth of the way past the selection. That looks good. And as you can see here, there's a little line from when we did the gradient. What you want to do then is just take the eraser tool and erase the unnecessary line. So let's take our eraser tool, choose maybe 150 pixels around there, and then set the hardness to 0. This will make the edges all fuzzy and stuff like that, so it's a cleaner erase. Then you can just run it along the edge. Now if we zoom in, we can see that there is no more line there. See? It's all clean. It's just a nice gradient from the top, so it kind of blends a bit. Now what we want to do is we want to duplicate that layer. So to duplicate is Control J, and then we want to go to Edit, Transform, Flip Vertically. Once we've flipped it vertically, we drag it to the very bottom, so there's kind of a contrasting gradient at the bottom, so it's all uniform and symmetrical. So once it's at the bottom, you can leave it there, and we're going to change the name of the bottom gradient layer, since it's no longer called top gradient. So you double click the name, not around the name. You double click the name, and let's rename it to bottom gradient. Once you have that done, the banner is the next part. Now this part can be challenging to some people because it's not always that easy to use a pen tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the pen tool, create a new layer, which is Control Shift N, hit enter, and we can name this banner. And I'm going to create some sort of like swervy wave. You'll see what I mean once I do it. So okay, and then let's go back to where we started and complete the selection. If you're not happy with the results, you can just right click, hit delete path, and do it again. So here we go, make our selection, then right click on the canvas and click make selection. You want to turn the feathering to 0, and there we go. Now on that layer, let's hit D, and that will reset your colors, and then hit X to set white as a foreground color. Now let's go to our gradient tool, and at the top make sure you have the white to transparent selected. Then we want to go from the left side at an angle kind of upward to the right side. So we get a nice gradient like that, you see? Now what's important, we need to control click again the main layer icon. And that makes a selection around the main layer where all the content's going to end up being. And then we go back to our banner layer. As you can see right here, you have the gloss that we put on the main part traveled off into the gray background. So let's zoom back out, and what you want to do is you want to remove that part. So once you have the main background layer, not the background layer, but the main content layer selected, you click Control Shift I, which inverses the selection, and then on the banner layer you hit delete, and that deletes the white part that was unnecessary. Now to get a nice fading effect, you take the opacity and drag it down. Let's drag it down pretty low so it creates a nice subtle effect. Okay, here we go. The next part we'll want to do is create the text. Now in this layout, the text isn't going to be out there. It's going to be subtle. It's going to say what your place is called, etc. So let's drag our text tool, and let's choose one of my favorite fonts called Prototype, which I got from dafont.com. Let's type in passthebowl.com. Spelled that wrong. And then let's find a nice place to put it. Let's try to follow the curves of the layout because that'll look nice. Now, when you have a longer title, it's hard to follow the actual curve of the glossy part. So, since this is just a tutorial, I'm not going to match it up exactly, because then I would have to curve all the letters. So now what you want to do is you want to control click that icon, and that'll make a selection of all the letters. Then you can actually completely hide the text layer. As you can see, now you just have a selection of what the text is and nothing there. So let's create a new layer, Control Shift N, hit enter, and we can take the gradient tool, make sure white is your foreground color, and then set it to white to transparent. Now let's take the horizontal gradient tool and drag it across. Make sure you get the right length so it looks good, and then you can deselect. It'll give you a kind of faded banner look. It looks quite nice once you have the positioning just right. Now above the fading text, you can actually add your company logo. Um, Now I'm gonna drop that into my layer, so just 1 second. Gonna pause the video again so I can drop. So I just dropped in there like a little logo design. It doesn't fit that well because it wasn't actually designed for this layout, but whatever, it's fine. Um, the next part we'll want to do is creating the content where actual text will go. So what we want to do to set that up, we first want to create a navigation so it can predetermine where the content's going to be. So let's create a new layer, Control Shift N, and let's name it Navigation. Once you've done that, let's go to the rounded rectangle tool, have a radius of about 10 pixels, and let's create a nice navigation button size. That looks about good. Notice this won't be the actual size of the button because that is massive. But what you want to do is click Make Selection, 0 as the feather, hit OK, and then make sure white is your foreground color. Go to the gradients and pick white to transparent. Then we want to move from top to bottom holding Shift, making a gradient. So once we have that, we can go to our rectangle tool and make sure it's on Subtract from Selection and cut off the bottom half. This will only select the part that we want for the navigation. So to delete the rest, you can just hit Control Shift I and hit delete. You can deselect that, and let's duplicate this a couple times and line them all up. Let's keep them 2 pixels away from each other. You may notice the navigation size isn't the size of the buttons aren't perfect. I would have personally liked to do them a bit smaller, but I'm just trying to make this video as short as I can because I don't enjoy uploading more than 2-part videos on just one layout. So we just need to duplicate it maybe one more time. Move it 2 pixels away. Now let's we go to our layers palette, Shift select all of the layers. So click the top one, hold Shift, and click the bottom navigation layer, and then you can hit Control E, which will flatten all the layers that you selected together. So now it's all one layer. As you can see, I can hide it and show it as one layer. So now we want to use our centering trick again. So we control click the main layer, which is the blue background part. Control click that, and then we'll want to go to this layer, go to Layer, Align to Selection, Horizontal Centers. That'll get that centered. We don't want to do vertical centers because that will put it in the middle of the page, not at the top where the navigation should be. The next part, we want to tone it down a bit because the color of the navigation is too out there. So let's tone it down a bit. And now let's make a transition into our content. So we're going to choose 2 very nice colors for that. Let's pick this color and a darker version of this color. So let's choose this color, and we can change this color so it's actually noticeable to like around there. Make this a bit darker. And you want to take the pencil tool. So you go to B, you hit B, and that takes you to the brush. Then you want to right click it and hit pencil. The pencil should be 1 pixel when you're doing this, and for this you want to create a new layer, which is Control Shift N, and then you're just going to take the I think, which would look best, either the or light color. Let's start with the dark color. So if you want to copy these colors, the dark color is 2581CC, and the light color is 6AB2EB. So let's zoom in a fair amount so we can get it perfectly lined up. Take our pencil tool and start out to the side some. Make sure it's all lined up. Click and drag. Be sure when you're dragging to hold the shift button to keep the line perfectly straight. Once you get it all the way across, it's okay if it goes a bit over the navigation, like to the right of it, because we're going to trim that down in a couple seconds once I get there. Here we go. Let's zoom out again. Okay, now that we're zoomed out, you can see we have a nice line. Now, to make this easier, let's just duplicate that line, Control J, and just move it down 1 pixel. Now, what we want to do, we want to Control click, and make sure the light color is the background color. So then, let's hit Control backspace to color it. There we go. Now, as you see, we have a nice double line which acts as a separation between the navigation and the content. But as you can see, the double line kind of goes over the navigation. We want that. So what you want to do to make it look a bit more flush, though, is take the eraser tool. Let's do around 100 pixels, that should be good, and set the hardness to 0. We'll go to the edge. Make sure you have both the layers. Make sure you combine both the layers by selecting both of them and hitting Control E. And then you take the eraser tool and you just erase slightly on the edge to make it kind of look sharp. You know? Just play around with that, see what nice effect you can get. So, for again, the purpose of time, this isn't going to be perfectly centered and stuff like that, and both sides aren't going to be perfectly symmetrical. But it's fine. The next part is we want to add blending effects. So to do that, you can right click the layer, hit blending options, and then let's put a drop shadow. For the drop shadow, we want to make the distance 0, and maybe lower the opacity a bit. Hit OK, and as you can see, there's a drop shadow on the top and bottom of the line. So what we want is it for the shadow to be only on the bottom line. So what we have to do is we have to kind of remove the layer style so we can delete it. So below the line layer, you're going to create a new layer, Control Shift N. So below the layer where the line is, there's a new layer. And then you'll just Shift select both of them from the bottom to the top and click Control E. This will keep the color. What am I trying to say? This will keep the effect it has, but remove it from the effects panel. So now what we want to do is we want to zoom in pretty closely so we can see exactly where the effect is. We want to take our rectangle tool and we want to create a selection and just delete. We're just going to delete the unnecessary top shadow. So let's hit delete, and there we go, the top shadow is disappeared. So now we can zoom out to our actual size again. And as you can see, it creates a nice separation effect. our next part is going to be the content. But before we do that, we want to add some separation between the navigation. So let's create a new layer, and we can just name this layer Navigation Separation. And you can layer the line layer, just anything you want. Let's just name it Navigation Line. For the navigation separation, we're going to create little lines in between the navigation. That's why I set the navigation to be 2 pixels apart. So let's go to our pencil tool. Let's do the dark color on the left. And then let's go down to the very bottom. Then hit X to switch colors. Then go down to the very bottom here. Now we have a nice separation there. So let's take our eraser tool also and just fade it out at the end, since we don't necessarily need that. Okay, now what we want to do is duplicate that and move it to every single part that needs it. Now where'd that layer go? I lost it. Let's zoom back into an navigation. And then we just move this to the next gap in the navigation, move it up to the necessary amount. And then let's duplicate it again, move it to the next, duplicate it again, move it to the next, duplicate it again, move it to the edge. Now on the edge, you want to make sure that the dark part is actually, the light part is facing outward. So let's duplicate it again and make sure you have all the gaps filled. So let's take this one and put it at the very left navigation. And the special thing about this one, we have to flip it around. So we go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontally. So the light part is on the outside. Okay, now we're going to create our actual content box. Content box is going to be a certain color in which that we can't have the border, the dark part facing in. We have to have the light part facing in. So let's go to Transform, Flip Horizontally again, and let's zoom in here so we can get a closer look and just make sure it's all flush. Now let's do this to the other side as well. Let's take it, flip it horizontally, and just make sure it's all flush. Now it's time to create our content. So the color we're going to use is one of the colors that we use in the border. So let's take the elliptical tool, create a new layer, and we can name this content. Let's go to the about edge of the where the border was, and just drop down to the other edge. The length at this time doesn't exactly matter because we can edit that. Now we want to make sure the darker color, which is 2E94EB, is the background color. So hit X to make the background color, and hit Control Backspace. Now we've filled that part with a selection. What we want to do to make sure that this is under the shadow of the navigation is drag it under there. Now as you can see, the box isn't quite long enough, so we can click Control T and drop it down. create a nice length that you want. It doesn't exactly matter. This tutorial, you can basically do whatever pleases you. You don't have to follow the exact things that I say. The next part we want to do is creating the border. So now what we're going to do, we're going to take one of the navigation separations. So let's zoom in on this one. Find out what layer it is. And then we're going to copy a section of it. So let's take just a small section, copy it, paste it, and move it under the content layer. Let's zoom out to our original pixel size. And then we can take it and drag it to the edge. So let's make sure this is at the very edge by zooming in. Nope, we need to move it one more pixel. There we go. And then to make it follow all the way through, also you want to match this up with the border of the navigation. So let's drag it above the content layer, just one layer above, and we need to move it right one pixel. So let's push it up so it's all kind of connective, and then we can hit Control T and we can stretch it. It's kind of taking a while. And just to tell you guys, if you hear my voice fluctuating in volume, I'm using a new microphone, which I am completely unused to using. So I'm not sure about the distance I need to be away from it and things like that. My previous microphone, I let my school use for a current Spanish project, because they were, my microphone was a webcam. It was built into the webcam, and they were video chatting with people from Spain or something like that, but I take French, so I don't know much about it. So once I get that back, it'll be back to normal, but I'm sorry about the fluctuating volume, if there is any. So hurry up, we're almost at the bottom. And now we're at the bottom. Now be sure to drag it a bit after the bottom so it can create that faded effect. Now let's zoom out to the original size. Here we go. Did I make it too wide? Zoom out one more. There we go. And we're going to actually duplicate that layer and put it on the other side. So go to Edit, Transform, Flip horizontally. And then let's drag it to the other side. Okay, it looks like it's all lined up. Now we just go down to the bottom and do our fade out effect. So take maybe a 100 to 150 pixel brush with the hardness set to 0 and just erase the bottom. Make it kind of again that sharp effect. Now what we want to do is we want to take the line that's under the navigation that fades into the content. We want to copy that and use it at the very bottom. So hit Control J to duplicate it. Now we can take the mouse button, which is keyboard shortcut is just V. We can just drag it down. Wrong layer. I took the wrong layer. Sorry. Let's take the navigation line, duplicate that, then we can drag it down to the bottom. Okay, that's all lined up. Um, 1 second. Getting IMs from a friend. Actually, the other owner of Passable.com asked me something, so let me text him 1 second. Sorry about that. And now what we're going to want to add is just content, footer, and all that, just the rest of the basic stuff. So let's create a new layer. Now for the navigation, we'll want to use a standard text type, which isn't prototype. So let's just use Arial, so we can make this dynamic later in the CSS and not have to have separate navigation images. So let's just click and drag, and let's just name this one Home. And we can set it to white. You might want to make the size maybe around 18 pixels, something kind of small, but so everybody can still read it. So now let's just, I guess, fade it down a bit. Now, as you might have noticed, the navigation icons, the buttons are actually a bit large. But when you're creating this yourself, you can create it the size that you prefer. Let's just duplicate it to every single navigation button. And then we can edit the text from there. Okay, now we have it all duplicated. Let's change the name. Let's change this to blog. Let's change this to forum. Let's change this to affiliate. And let's change this to contact us. Now we can get it recentered in all the boxes. All the buttons. Now I'm not gonna go for perfect centering because this is just a tutorial. When you're making it actually for your website, you can center it as much as you want. Okay, the next step is going to be adding content. The content is going to be smaller text. It was proven in multiple studies that smaller text actually helps kind of attract users because it makes them look at it harder and actually read the content that you have on your web page. So let's go to our text tool, create a standard text, which would be Arial, so it would be fine when we're using CSS and we wouldn't have to make our text images. So let's just select it, and we're going to create a small font, maybe 12, and for now I'll just do this, just to see what size we want. Now what we're going to do is we're going to open Firefox, let's say, and we're going to get our dummy text. Let me minimize this to the size of the actual recording dimensions. Okay, let's just type it in Google Ipsum. Our first hit is Lorem Ipsum, which I'm guessing is Latin. Let's just choose 5 paragraphs. And it will generate 5 paragraphs of dummy text. Copy that. Let's go back to Photoshop. Then we can edit this text layer. And just paste it in. Now what we can do is we can just duplicate that to use it again if we need it. Let's say we have another subject that we want to talk about. Let's say this is some sort of blog or something. So let's just drop it down here. What we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the navigation line again and drag it down here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of create a separation gradient. So we're going to create a new layer under that navigation line. We're going to go to our rectangle tool. We're just going to make a selection about this size. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to trim a layer later, and then you hit D to reset your colors and X to make white the foreground color. Then make sure your gradient is white to transparent. We're going to take this from the top. We're going to click Control Shift and drag down some. And then we're just going to take that and lower the opacity so it isn't as out there. And what you're actually going to do is on this part you're going to cut off the navigation line, because you don't want it going over the edge here. Let's cut off this side now. And there we go. That's our other part of the content. That all fits pretty nicely. Then I guess you're gonna want to add some sort of site nav. Let's just put some ipsum down here and call it a site map, even though it's not anything close to it. So let's just say that's our site map, where it's going to say where all our links go and stuff like that. Let's add a little title, site map. Create the font bigger. Now let's... Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button. Now let's... I guess now we're gonna just center both these layers. Sorry, I'm getting a bit lost with myself. Let's select our main area so we can center the layers perfectly. So we select the blue background part, go to layer, align to selection, horizontal sets. Align to selection, horizontal centers. The text has to be rasterized for it to be so that you can use the align to layer thing. So horizontal centers, nice and centered. Then we can just lower the opacity for this, so it's not out there. And lastly, you can just add your copyright. Let's just open the character map so I can copy the copyright sign. So throw that in there. 2009. Make this maybe 14 size font. And just stick it at the bottom. We can make sure it's all centered through this. Yeah, that looks about right. And that's just about it. The second part is going to be done by Rutger Boll. He's going to show you how to code this layout in CSS and HTML using Dreamweaver. Thank you for watching. Be sure to check out Passthebowl.com and my YouTube channel, which is named Tramposh, Tramposch. And our website, remember, Pass the Bowl, the bowl is spelled Boll. Thank you for watching. Be sure to watch the rest of my videos. See you later.